We got a great guest today because he's a comedian. I've never met him before. Joe Sib incorporates his life experience from growing up in California to being a former punk rocker frontman for the bands Wax and 22 Jacks.
I've been doing stand-up for 17 years, and I started out as a singer in a band, and my whole background was always music.
And he's coming next Saturday, November 15th, and he's bringing his hit one-man show, California Calling, a story of growing up punk rock.
So I wrote this show actually almost 15 years ago.
Whoever considered the funny guy in the group or anything like that?
Absolutely. Humor's always been my go-to. Always loved stand-up comedy.
Get ready. On November 15th, the Marc Kapetan Show takes over KMJ Now with a special guest appearance you won't want to miss. Tune in.
This is KMJ at KMJNow.com or wherever you stream. Welcome to the Marc Kapetan Show. This is attorney Marc Kapetan, your host. Today's show is brought to you by the Kapetan Brothers Law Firm. We've been serving the Central Valley since 1995. If you or anybody you know has been injured in an auto accident, a truck accident, or a motorcycle accident, give us a call at 559-498-8000. Or if you've been arrested or cited for a criminal offense, call the Kapetan Brothers at 559-498-8000, 559-498-8000, Kapetan Brothers. We are the Valley's law firm. Folks, a very, how they say on all those old talk shows, a very funny guest. We got a great guest today because he's a comedian. I've never met him before. He's out of the hard rock capital of California, Glendale. And he's coming next Saturday, November 15th, at the Tower Theater Lounge, and he's bringing his hit one-man show, California Calling, a story of growing up punk rock. It's set in 1980s California. It's described as a high-energy, heartfelt ride through the moment that skateboarding and punk rock exploded into the suburbs and changed everything. Joe Sib incorporates his life experience from growing up in California to being a former punk rocker frontman for the bands Wax and 22 Jacks to his current life as a father and to his comedy routines. You could catch his comedy specials on Dry Bar and 800 Pound Gorilla. Or you may have seen him on stage if you are a Metallica fan with the great Jim Brewer opening up as the opening act for Metallica. So welcome to the Marc Kapetan Show. Comedian Joe Sib.
What is up, Mark? How are you?
Great, Joe.
Dude,
Sounds
I
like
love that intro. You nailed it.
Oh, well, it's taken from your it's taken from your
It's
website.
what I sent over. No, but
yeah.
you know how it is. Like sometimes people, I do shows like this all the time, Mark, and people they're just they get the wrong information. They'll mention something that isn't relevant with 2025. But no, you nailed it.
Well, listen, buddy, you're talking about relevance. I'm an attorney. Look at these notes I got on you here. So
I love it.
I prepare.
Hey, dude, do you know how to dissolve an LLC? That's something I wanted to speak to.
You have a partner?
No, check it. Well, it's funny. I mean, honestly, because it's funny. Me and Jim Brewer.
Look at free advice already from the comedian he wants.
No, I have to ask because me and Jim Brewer, we had a merchandise company together for. We started a merchandise company together for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And then he's off the road. And long story short, we were like, it was kind of a Band-Aid as an operation for both of us. And then now. He's basically going to do a merch deal with someone.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, we got to dissolve the LLC. And at first I was like, him and I both were like, well, how do we do that? And then at the end of the day, his attorney was like, I'll handle it for you. But it was funny because I was getting out of an LLC is almost as hard as starting.
Yeah. So listen, we do criminal defense and personal injury, so we don't do that. But I was just advising a guy yesterday because he has an LLC too. And I said, don't have partners. That's the key to everything, even if they're the great Jim Brewer.
Yeah, he's been great to me, man. It was funny when you asked me, have I ever been to Fresno? And obviously growing up in the Bay Area, Santa Cruz, San Jose, Fresno is always something, we came through Fresno all the time when I was in bands. But the last time I ever performed there was when I came through with when Jim and I were the opening act for Metallica, and we performed there, and it was amazing. And then I want to say I did a show at Strummers. Is that
Strummers?
Is that in Fresno?
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually did a comedy show with the same group of people that are bringing me this time. Numbskull Presents.
Of course.
The founder Eddie
Numbskull.
Eddie Numbskull has been one of my longest running friends since we were kids.
Really?
Wax. Yeah, Wax 22 Jacks. He's a legendary figure in the scene, such a great friend, and he's always been a believer when I started doing comedy right away. He was the first promoter to bring me just to do stand-up, and that was at Strummers, and I was so like, I go, Eddie, how are you going to get people there? What are we going to do? And he said, don't worry, I will have a crowd for you. So when I wrote this one-man show, from the moment I kind of started doing it, Eddie was like, hey, man, when you can, I would love to bring you back up to Fresno, Bakersfield, Central California. And that's how this all came together. So I'm super psyched to come
My
through.
brother John, he was a promoter. He still promotes shows and stuff like that. We were talking about Eddie last night because I was like, geez, look at the lineup that he has coming into this Tower Theater, including you, but all these other great acts and then tribute acts and stuff. I'm doing a show for him November 29th. Van Halen's playing. Van Halen.
Oh, I love it.
And I have a Pat Benatar tribute, and we're going to do some ladies from the 80s songs also with Margot Kim, a famous news reporter here in town that just is in her first band ever. So, yeah, Eddie's a great guy. I love dealing with that guy. Yeah.
Great guy. And he's such a figure, and he's been around for so long. And that's when promoters have been around as long as someone like Eddie has, and everyone only speaks highly of him. It's rare. I can tell you that right now, because promoters, as you know from playing music markets, like they come and they go.
And they're usually horrible
sketchy.
to you. Yeah, exactly.
Terrible.
All right, listen. Tell me about the show. The show. I love this review you have. A born raconteur, which, by the way, is not a punk name at all. Raconteur brings you into the van, the mosh pit, the late night decisions by Steve H. from 1-4 Review. Well, number one, what punk guy is in a van late night making decisions?
Well,
so tell me about it.
Yeah.
Now, just tell me about the show.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, so I've been doing stand-up for it'll be 17 years in January. And I started out as a singer in a band. And my whole background was always music. And when I owned a record company with my best friend, Bill Armstrong, for 30 years. And
you're talking about Billy Armstrong?
No, not Bill Armstrong from Green Day. This is Bill Armstrong from Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And me and Bill, we started a record company called Side One Dummy, and it was home to Flogging Molly, Go-Go Bordello, the Gaslight Anthem. We worked with Kevin Lyman in the Warped Tour, and we just had an amazing lineup of bands. And then, we had a lot of hardcore bands like Title Fight and, heavy bands. We had so many, the Briggs from Los Angeles, just so many great bands. But I mean, I'd say the biggest bands that we worked with were Go-Go Bordello, Gaslight Anthem, Flogging Molly. They were the bands that really blew up for us. Great bands and bands that are still doing it. And what ended up happening was I had stopped singing, and I really had focused on my family. I'd focused on being a dad. I had just gotten married. And for about 15, 20 years, I just focused on being the guy at Side One Dummy, signing these bands, working these bands. And then at a certain point, I was trying to figure out a way to get back on stage. And the first thing that I always had messed around with was this idea of writing a show about growing up in the 80s when punk rock hit the suburbs. And at the time, doing stand-up didn't really seem like that could be possible, but doing a one-man show, storytelling show could. So I wrote this show actually almost 15 years ago, and I did it around Los Angeles, and people really, really liked it. And what ended up happening was I performed it one night at the Improv in Hollywood, and the woman at the time that was booking it came. She was at the show, and she said, "Man, I love your show." And have you ever thought about just doing stand-up without the stories and the photographs and all of that? And that was really what led me to do stand-up, because I came back, and instead of doing this show, because California Calling is a show that it's a 60-minute show, has over 58 photographs in it, and it's all photographs from that era, from the 80s. They're photographs of me, they're photographs of other bands.
So you did, see, I thought you were going to tell me that this was basically a compilation of, and I wanted to know the difference between your difference, what you considered stand-up comedy going into something that's more of a George Carlin thing where it's more of a monologue type thing. But you're saying that you came up with this idea of California Calling and this one-man, one-act show long before becoming a comedian. Did you ever have any aspirations of becoming a comedian? Were you ever considered the funny guy in the group or anything like that?
Absolutely. The only reason I was doing, the reason I came up with the one-man show was because when I started talking about doing comedy, you know, everyone around me, you know, I'd always was the funny guy. I was always, you know, humor's always been my go-to. The people that I've grown up with, anyone that ever played in a band with me, they were, you know, I was always the guy that, you know, I was the funny guy.
The annoying guy, no.
You know, no, I was, you know, comedy was always my go-to. When I was a little kid, it was my go-to. I always loved stand-up comedy, but the idea of performing stand-up comedy just seemed something that when you're saying that you're a stand-up comedian, you're essentially saying that you're the funniest guy. And I don't know, at that point, I felt like I could say that.
You didn't think of yourself that way.
I didn't think of, I thought of myself as a funny person, but I did not at all put myself at the level of the stand-up comedians that I was, you know, watching and seeing at that time. So the one-man show, when I wrote it, you know, it really opened up a lot of doors for me. But the ultimate door that it opened for me is it allowed me to perform in comedy clubs and meet, you know, bookers, and they were like, "Hey, we love what you're doing, but you know, it's not stand up, it's storytelling.
Right.
Why don't you come back and give me 5 minutes of comedy?" And then that really began the next 17 years of my life.
Okay, hold on. We got to go. We got to go to a break, and we're going to talk about how Jim Brewer says that you talk on and on. No, I'm teasing you. This is Joe Sib. We're going to get him to tell more of his story of life growing up, California Calling, growing up punk rock. We'll be right back on the Marc Kapetan Show after this. This is the Marc Kapetan Show on KMJ. This is KMJ at KMJnow.com. Welcome back to the Marc Kapetan Show. Hey, folks, we'd like to thank our sponsor. We love these guys called the Akisian Brothers at the Arc Mediterranean Grill. I'm going to pop this music down, Marcella, because I want to get serious about the Arc Mediterranean Grill. I love these guys. They make some great food, mouth-watering hummus. You like what is it, Marcella, a chicken kebab plate you love? Marcella loves the chicken kebab plate. Go to the Arc Mediterranean Grill. They're at 2 locations, one in Fresno, one in Clovis, and pick up some food for the family or take some for the office. Champlain and Shepherd, and at Herndon and Armstrong, 2 locations. Authentic Armenian goodness brought to you by the Akisian Brothers, the Arc Mediterranean Grill. Folks, we're back on with Joe Sib. He's a comedian who's coming this Saturday, November 15th, at the Tower Theater Lounge, bringing his one-man show, California Calling, a story of growing up punk rock. Joe, you were talking about the one-man show. Did you wrote this all yourself? Marcella, when we were making sure that you were going to come on air here at 12 noon, she goes, you know, I hope he's on time. I said, this guy sounds like he's got his crap together. So did you came from an educated background. You have all these idyllic lifestyles, living on a horse ranch when you were a kid and stuff like that. You eventually get into punk rock, and we're going to find out how you got into that kind of thing. But I'm assuming that you took this as a school project, English project, whatever it is. This was is part of this show just the love of writing and their love of being creative, whether it's on stage as a rock and roll guy or as this act basically in the one-man show?
I mean, the way the show came about was I was going from being a singer in a band and trying to find my way back on stage. And when you're a singer, people aren't, you know, sussing you out to come and jam with them. If you're a guitar player and drummer, everyone's like, come on down, you know, we'll do a couple songs together. When you're the singer, you're the vibe of the band. So when I wrote California Calling, I had all these stories about growing up in the Bay Area. And at the time, it was the 80s, and I felt like it was such a special time in the sense that skateboarding and punk rock were colliding.
Yeah.
And I was just in the right place at the right time for all of these bands that went on to become icons. Bands like Black Flag, the Circle Jerks, Social Distortion, the Ramones,
right.
All of the first wave, the second wave. And when I wrote the show, I just thought, hey, this will be a cool story to tell. I never thought I would perform it at the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh this summer.
Yeah,
I
you
never
just got
thought
back from there, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was something that showed you how wide and how popular punk rock music and skateboarding has become, because I was doing this show in front of people from Germany and Scotland and Ireland and England, and they identified with the show. And that really was the moment where it hit me how important this music and this lifestyle now has become for so many people. It's no longer an underground music. It's no longer an underground sport with skateboarding. It's really become, the people that are coming to the show are parents. The people that are coming to the show are teachers, doctors, and they all grew up on this.
Well, that's what one of the
great to have that happen.
That was one of the things that I was wondering is in Edinburgh. Are you getting the point across? Did you have trouble, number one, communicating, because man, their accent is way different than ours? And
no, there wasn't any. You know what's so funny, Mark? I kept myself up at night before I went over there. Literally, that was the thing that would wake me up in the middle of the night. Yeah. Are they going to get it? Are there, what are they going to be like? I've heard stories about, this, how Scots just drink and they're going to heckle. They call them punters. And I had all these visions in my head of all these things that could go wrong. And I got to tell you, from the moment I did my first show in the UK, and then when I went up to Scotland, I was met with nothing but love. And what I learned really quick was, they were there for a show. They wanted to hear a beginning, a middle, and an end. They were along for the ride. And it really changed, and after having 17 years of doing stand-up comedy and touring as much as I have and doing as many shows, because joke writing and stand-up comedy and storytelling, it's two different muscles. Right. And what I love about doing California Calling is the stories that I'm going to tell they're funny. And some of them aren't funny.
Right.
And some of them are hilarious and some of them are sad. And it really takes you on an up and down roller coaster ride for the entire hour. And while I'm doing it, Mark, you're seeing all of these photographs from some photographs of me and my family when I was a little kid living in the Santa Cruz Mountains, all the way to great pictures from Ed Culver, a legendary photographer from Los Angeles, that photos a Black Flag that you've never seen before.
Right. Talking about the Santa Cruz and growing up, you grow up on a horse ranch. You had every opportunity, I don't want to say a silver spoon in the mouth type thing, but what's the moment, and it all started, I think, with a skateboard contest that you said, but what was the moment that you started thinking to yourself, real quick, what did mom and dad do, by the way?
Well, I mean, at that time, as much as we were on a horse ranch, it wasn't a horse ranch with like Appaloosas and like racehorses. This was, my parents, bought some acres in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the 70s. And we had a well, and my dad was an English teacher at the time. And my mom was just a mother that was, raising me and my sister when my dad was at work. And then they would come together in the afternoons and they took care of horses. They boarded horses. So it was definitely not like racehorses or anything like that. It was very, very rural. And it was the 70s, and there was hippies and there was people that were, thinking differently. And my mom and dad really brought all those people together. And for me, I was just raised with two parents that their biggest advice to me was love what you do and do what you love. They never once questioned anything that I've done.
But what's interesting is the thing that out of what you just said there that really pointed out to me was my dad was an English teacher, and you're creating this beautiful soliloquy, however you want to put it, this one-man act. And so we're going to get on how you sort of deviated from the norm, but it seems, this is what I love about the show and doing this, is finding out where the person came from. And it seems like you go back to that. You go back to dad and that
absolutely, that
ability to have great English communication and all that kind of stuff. What was the moment that you felt, I'm not like mom and dad as far as I'm not going to be a teacher, I'm not going to be this, I'm going to be a punk rocker, or I'm going to be a skateboarder? What was that moment?
I never had a moment that I felt different than them. If anything, I felt that my mother and father were punk rock. They were always doing everything the opposite that other people were doing. Yeah. No one was moving from Philadelphia and New York City to California. You have to remember, at this time, they left all of their relatives. They're Italian. Irish family on the East Coast, and that they were everyone thought they were crazy that they would take their newborn son to California and live in the woods. And so to me, I was always raised around these two parents that were never doing what normal people did. As much as it feels normal to me, their lifestyle was completely, not normal to their family, to their parents. So I just grew up in an atmosphere like that was very, very, it nurtured thinking differently. It nurtured being different, as much as, it annoyed my dad so many times when, I looked the way that I looked. He would just roll his eyes and be like, okay, if you're going to have a mohawk, I want to have a mohawk. And I'd be like, you can't. And he's like, why can't I have a mohawk? Why can't I wear the bondage pants? And
did Dad ever do the mohawk?
No, he never did. But he thought it was just so, the look, my dad always used to say to me, we're coming up on the break. Got it.
No. What I was going to say was, you see my dad here in the background, Marine, and he never had, listen, he would look at us with the long hair and he would say, and we are going to go to break here. And his thing was, that's fine, as long as you understand that life's not always going to be fair and people may treat you differently, and you just have to accept it, and you have to work that much harder to have people like you and accept you. So we're going to be right back after this. Great words of wisdom from our fathers. This was Joe Sib, comedian, hit one-man show, California Calling, a story of growing up punk, this November 15th at the Tower Theater Lounge. We'll be right back after this. This is KMJ at KMJNow.com or wherever you stream. Also, listen, 50,000 watt blowtorch on 105.9 FM, 580 AM. So I love the fact, Joe, that we're still on radio. Joe Sib, comedian, has his hit one-man show, California Calling, a story of growing up punk rock, this Saturday, November 15th at the Tower Theater Lounge. As always, this show is brought to you by the Kapetan Brothers Law Firm. Call us if you've been in an accident or if you've been arrested for a criminal offense. 559-498-8000. Kapetan Brothers, we're the Valley's law firm. If you need free advice about an LLC,
let's go.
Don't call us like Joe. No, okay.
Dude, I started out in radio. That was kind of like my gateway to, I think, comedy. Before I started doing stand-up, I was on a radio station in LA called Indie 103.1. It was a really cool station, and that kind of started me to write the California Calling.
Doing music or a talk show?
No, I was a DJ. I was a DJ at a show every Thursday night. It was a really cool station too. We had Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. He did kidding. Afternoons. Yeah, he did Jonesy's Jukebox. We had Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. He was the morning show host. After him, we had Dave Navarro that was on Saturday nights. My show was on Thursday, and Henry Rollins was on there as well. So it was a very, very, eclectic group of people, and it was on in LA, and then my show, I basically at that point had guests on, and we played a lot of punk rock because at that point Spotify wasn't around. From a station,
like you guys were all coming to the same station. So you knew all these guys?
It was Indie 103.1 in LA. It was a legendary station. Their whole thing was to take down the ratings from K-Rock. K-Rock was the #1 station in Los Angeles, and they were just trying to take enough of the share so that it would basically, they just wanted to F with K-Rock, which was so fun because K-Rock was such a monster, and at that point, it had just taken over everything. So it was fun to be a part of this, this underdog station, and everyone loved us. It was amazing.
So you hung out with all these guys back in the day?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I would go on the air. It was crazy because Henry Rollins, we actually had our shows back to back. He was on like at 8 o'clock till 10, and then my show was 10 to midnight. And a lot of times he would just hang out in the studio while I did my show.
Oh, that's great.
And he was just super, super cool. Very what you expect from Henry Rollins.
Intense?
Intense, yeah. He was super intense. Like, not intense like in a jerk way, but
really
just very to the point. What you'd want. You know what it is? What you'd want from Henry Rollins, like very matter of fact, to the point, very knowledgeable about music.
Right.
Beyond, like, I always felt like I knew nothing about music after I would listen to his show because he knows the date it was recorded, how many promos were sent out, who they were sent to, what day it was released on.
Really? Like a photographic memory, the guy.
He just has everything. He has it dialed. The other thing that was great was Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, who, you know, I became friends with. He was just such a sweetheart. He would leave records for me. A lot of people would send him stuff that he wouldn't play on his show, and he'd say, "Hey, I think you like this." A lot of times I'd go down there in the afternoons to, you know, do a promo or something, and then Steve would be there, and he was just always, you know, the biggest misconception that I always thought people had of Steve Jones was like he was this, I don't know, kind of rowdy English guy, you know, hooligan. And he was just, I don't know, like he was just a big, lovable dude. And he was always super, super, super cool. And
huge regret of mine.
Dude.
Yeah, huge regret of ours. We had to walk away from a show with Ian Hunter, and Steve Jones was the guitar player at the time. And it was just like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to
he's
see
great.
it.
Great guy and a ripping. Everyone, you know, no one ever really gave Jonesy, I think, the credit as a guitar player. I mean, if you knew he was the guy. But one of the things that he did on his show that was just so amazing, when he would take out his guitar and while he was doing his radio show every afternoon, he would just play songs on his guitar, and everyone that would hear this was just blown away on how good of a guitar player he was.
You mean just with a group of people, or on air?
Like right now, like if we're doing an interview together, let's say you were Steve Jones, he'd have his guitar and he'd be talking, and then he'd, you know, I would say, "Oh man, I always loved that Bowie song," and he would just start playing. And
no kidding.
I mean, I never did that with him, but all of the guests on there, he had those moments with him.
And what kills you, because you think of a lot of these punk rockers like, oh, those are the guys that didn't know how to play their instruments, and that's why they went into punk rock. But that wasn't the case. The guy was a great player.
I remember growing up that there was a rumor that, I don't know where I heard it, but it, you know, and I'm sure other people heard it. There was this crazy rumor that, you know, that it wasn't Steve Jones playing on the record, and that they hired people to do it because the band couldn't play. Where in reality, you know, obviously it was Jonesy, and I want to even say, like, he did a lot of the bass on the record, you know, so like he's a superstar guitar player, just I think really underrated in that world.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It was more Sid Vicious that they did that, who couldn't really play his bass.
I think Jonesy played a lot of it. That's wild. It was great being on the station with him.
Who was your influences?
Musically, I would say, I mean, for me, musically, it goes. The Ramones were definitely the gateway band for me. They spoke to me in a way that no other band had ever spoke to me before. I think because their songs were so to the point, their songs were so short. There's no fat on them. They get right to the chorus. They get the intro, you got the verse, you get the chorus, you get another verse, you get another chorus, and you're out. I loved it. They really spoke to me. And then growing up in California, I was in the right place at the right time, and the bands that, you know, I absolutely loved. A lot of the bands from the Bay Area were, you know, bands like Verbal Abuse, you know, Code of Honor. These bands that were very influential for me as a kid growing up. And then, you know, a lot of the stuff that was coming out of the East Coast, you know, Minor Threat. I loved a lot of the stuff that was. You know, I would say Minor Threat out of Los Angeles, Youth Brigade, out of Los Angeles, Social Distortion, huge inspiration on me. I'd almost say that Social Distortion probably inspired me more. It would be like Ramones, Social Distortion. They really spoke to me. They were the first band I ever saw in 1982, Social Distortion.
We did a couple, probably about 3-4 shows with them back in the day.
I'm sure,
John Maurer, the bass player.
Great guy.
Great guy.
John was great.
Yeah.
John, Dennis. Mike,
Dennis, that's right.
You know, I saw them, you know, at that era. Chuck Biscuits was on drums.
Great, by the way.
Charlie
Chuck
was
Biscuits.
on drums for a little while. You know, so Social Distortion for me, really, if you were to say to me, there's one, you know, for me, the LA scene and the Orange County scene, you know, Orange County for sure. It would be like the Orange County scene for me. It's between Social Distortion, Adolescence, and then like as far as like LA goes, I always was, you know, really influenced by the Circle Jerks. I loved Keith Morris. I loved him in Black Flag, but I loved him in the Circle Jerks. And those bands just spoke to me. And like I said, I was in the right place at the right time when they came through the suburbs.
You were in the Santa Cruz area, right? Did you ever know a band? We played with them, man, probably 83. The Batteries.
The Batteries, no.
Oh God, I don't know if I could find it anymore. You got to go look these guys up. They were somewhat punk, somewhat new wave. Very, very cool band.
Yeah.
So
I remember in Santa Cruz, it was like a lot of the Tubes. They were super popular.
Yep. Huge.
And then you know, the Catalyst in Santa Cruz was the club.
Great place
where everyone played at. and it's still going.
I saw Rick Springfield there.
Oh, I'm sure.
So it was great.
Wow. Everyone came through there.
Yeah,
Everyone.
that was in like 85 or 86 or something like that.
Wow.
Now you own a Prius.
Ha! Who doesn't, man? With the price of gas, you got to have one.
I love your in one of your specials, your comedy special. You're like, yeah, I used to listen to Rage Against the Machine, and now I own a Prius.
Yeah. It used to be like, F you, I won't do what you tell me. And then the other day I was like, F you, I'll totally do what you tell me as I'm driving my Prius around. Yeah, no. It's funny. It was funny, man. Cause the Prius thing is like, everyone made fun of the Prius until now when you pull up at the gas pump and you got this guy in the 5150 truck and he's just spending $200, $300 to fill up. And you're like, hey, dude, I love your truck. And then they're looking at you in the Prius and they're like, I love that you just filled your car up for $43.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah. And
I have a Tahoe. And it's
God.
over $100 every time you fill it
Yeah,
up.
it's brutal.
$150. It's nuts. And the styling on the Priuses have gotten a lot better than that little grandma styling they used to have. So
you know what? I'm not even gonna go there because the Prius still looks lame to me. There's nothing. The word Prius is too close to the word penis, and I think they did that on purpose. It's just such. Like people talk about masculinity and emasculating a man. Like if you're in a Prius, you are literally just been stripped down to, you have had everything taken.
Well, if you
There's
see
nothing cool about a Prius.
If you see a guy with a mohawk, no, you don't have a mohawk anymore. If you see a
dude.
punk rocker driving a Prius, say, hey, Joe, what's going on? We'll be right back on the Marc Kapetan Show. This is KMJ. This is KMJ. Welcome back to the Marc Kapetan Show. Folks, again, want to thank our sponsor, the Arc Mediterranean Grill. Go check out the Akizian brothers over there, and they're going to make you some awesome Armenian goodness. You like a little baklava? It's great. I love getting the lamb chops. The lamb chops, I think, are great over at the Arc Mediterranean Grill. A little bit of hummus. If you like a chicken kebab, Marcella's favorite is the chicken kebab plate. 2 locations, one in Fresno and one in Clovis. Arc Mediterranean Grill, authentic Armenian goodness. Brought to you by the Akizian brothers. All right, we're back on with Joe Sib. He's a comedian, has his hit one-man show, California Calling, story of growing up punk rock, this Saturday, November 15th at the Tower Theater Lounge. Joe, a former punk rocker, former skateboarder, singer in a punk rock band back in the day, is now a father, drives a Prius, plays pickleball.
Dude, did I say that?
Yeah, hey man, I did my research. I checked out your comedy specials. Great stuff.
I love pickleball.
If you love,
crushes it.
My brother's part of the tennis club here in town, and there was a big fight as to whether a tennis club could have pickleball, and pickleball side won out. And so, if you want to play pickleball, I'll get my brother Peter to play pickleball with you when you come into Fresno this Saturday.
Yeah, because pickleball, the reason everyone loves pickleball was because playing tennis, there's so much more to it. Whereas pickleball, you can feel like you know how to play in an afternoon. Yeah. Tennis that's not going to happen.
Well, and it's pretentious.
Yeah, it's like pickleball is the Kid Rock of tennis.
Yeah, I think that's why the tennis club didn't want pickleball.
Yeah, they don't want it. They don't want it.
You know what I thought was beautiful, and I want to talk about your son, who's now a singer, and your daughter, who wanted to go to Catholic school when she was a kid.
Yep.
You've said multiple times in your shows, and this goes for me too. I was in rock and roll bands my whole life. By the way, I'm doing a tour with the Dictators. You know the Dictators?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not playing with the Dictators.
Handsome Dick Manitoba.
Well,
legend.
They've split up, but Handsome Richard, as we call him, is a buddy of mine, and they lost a guitar player, so I'm going to go fill in on guitar and do Sweden and New York and a bunch of other places. Yeah,
dude, he's a legend.
All right, well, we're going to get together with you, me, and Handsome. All right,
let's go.
But it goes for me too, and I thought it was beautiful and great to have your kids hear you say this. You never were into the drug scene or anything like that.
Never.
I had,
and they don't believe me. They don't believe me. I swear to God, Mark, my son will be like, "Come on, I'm like, dude, I
if you were
weed, but I couldn't pull it, and then I just never got into drugs and, you know, and growing up around music and growing up, or, you know, that it was everywhere. But, I just never got into it. And also because of the scene of music I got into with punk rock, there was kids obviously doing drugs, but for the crew that I hung out with, no one was into it. And if you were just looked at as lame. And I never got into it.
And what's interesting is the same thing with us is, and I've told my clients, they go, oh, well, all of us did cocaine back in the day. I'm like, not me. And maybe all your friends did it because that's what you guys had in common, you know, along with other, you know, problems and stuff like that. But do you think that by the time the third wave of punk came around, which I like to call the third wave, you know, the LA and Bay Area scene and stuff like that, the urban punk type thing, Green Day and all that, was it a more tame, that it was all about the music, the look, and it wasn't the anarchy, the defiance, the drugs and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, my personal opinion is I think drugs and all of that, you know, whenever any style of music, it's always going to be there, you know, like whether, you know, there's different waves of it.
Yeah.
There's different times, you know, I think like anything else, you know, there's times where drinking's more popular than drugs. Drugs are more popular than drinking. You know, edibles are more popular than smoking. Smoking's more popular than doing blow. But I mean, I think now, whenever you're going to have your ups and downs and of where drugs are popular and where they're not, you know, when you play music, I think regardless of whatever style of music that you play, you know, whether it's Green Day when they were doing their thing, or Rancid or Offspring and that whole push, and then later on, you know, the bands that you have that are out now, I think just everyone kind of now takes, at least what I see with young people, is they kind of take a step back and they're like, okay, how did that work out for those people? How did that work out, you know, for me if I tried it? And I think just people are more, they're more open to kind of looking at the result of what hard drug use and hard alcohol can use. I don't have a judgment with it. Like, I have no problem if,
no. Hold on now. Honestly, you should have a judgment with it, because I think, you know, we're trying to create a better society or whatever it may be. Or for your kids, you want to have a judgment against it because you don't want your kids to do it. But listen, I saw, and I like the fact that you make it a matter of reflection that the new punks saw many of the old punks. I wrote a song about all my buddies who died from heroin overdoses and stuff like that. And so it is interesting that you would see the early ones early punkers who just didn't care. They were trying to escape something, and then it became more of a musical thing where we love the music and we see that past and we don't want to get into that. So, I mean, kudos.
that was it for me. The only reason, like, I always say to people, like, my biggest drug was the music. My biggest drug was the shows. My biggest drugs, you know, were being a part of that scene, because that was my biggest drug.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thrived and I lived off of the energy that the music created. And I've kind of always been that guy where, you know, even with the stand-up comedy and with where I'm at in my life now, it's always been about the show. It's always been about the music. It's always been about the actual moment that's happening. And that's where I get super high off of all of that. And I've just been fortunate that I just never was in a place where I turned to drugs to get me that way, because I was more into the music than anything.
I get it. I say I don't even care if there's an audience half the time, because I just love playing. I love it. So listen, but I want everybody to come out to the shows because I want the audience.
Yeah, let's not get crazy. We need an audience.
Exactly. Hey, you know, speaking about the worries of drugs and the being in bands and all that kind of stuff, your kid's now a singer. You said he's crushing it.
Oh my God, my son
Nate?
Nate Sib. Yeah, check him out, Nate Sib. He just finished a huge tour with another artist that's like his best friend, and they came up together, a kid named Tu Hollis. And it was amazing. I've just watched my son go from, you know, playing these small venues to watching him at the Shrine 2 nights in a row,
Marcella,
6,000 kids.
Didn't you tell me that your kid is hanging out with somebody who knows Tu Hollis? Yeah, he was just mentioning Tu. So okay,
yeah.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, Tu Hollis is massive.
Daughter wanted to go to Catholic school when she was 5 years old, which is definitely not punk. What is she doing now?
She directs. She's an independent director. She does a lot of independent videos for musicians. She
Yeah.
did her brother's video, one of the videos that's one of the bigger videos that Nate released. She directed it, came up with the concept. She's a photographer. She just released a photography book. So both of them are
Her name?
Her name is Chessa.
Chessa
So
and
everybody
Nate.
goes by Nate Sib, Chessa Sib. Super proud father. They're both. I mean, it's great because I was recently on the set of a video that Nate was doing and Chessa was directing them, and it was just great to see them working together as brother and sister.
If he didn't say it, what was his band's name?
No, he just goes by Nate.
Oh,
Sib.
that's so he's the
That's
band.
it.
Really?
He's a solo dude. Yep, solo.
Taken after dad.
Yeah, he's not splitting that money with anybody. He's rolling.
Isn't that wild, man? He's taken after dad. When we grew up, taken after dad meant, am I going to be a Marine or something like that? Am I going to be an English teacher?
I mean, hey, I don't know about taking after dad because, you know, you'll see when you watch him and you hear him, he's an amazing piano player and amazing singer. And I was more of a singer that, I mean, you know, the talent he has is
well, listen,
definitely-
my dad always says, my job as a father is to make sure you make one more dollar than I make in life. You know, I want my kid to be a bigger success than I was. Yeah.
He's killing it, man.
All right. Joe Sib, California Calling, a story of growing up punk rock, a one-man show coming this Saturday, November 15th at the Tower Theater Lounge. Brought to you by Eddie Numbskull, our buddy. So,
yes.
Yeah. Joe, loved having you on the show. We will see
Mark,
you. I will
thank you
be
so
there.
much for having me, and have a great time on that Dictators tour.
Oh, yeah.
Enjoy yourself, and I hope I get to see you, man. If you can come out,
I'm going to come and meet up with you, definitely.
Dude,
yes.
I would love to. We got to
All right,
hang
buddy.
out. It would be great. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No problem. We'll see you next week on the Marc Kapetan Show. This is KMJ.